Okay, so today's webinar is improving IBM developer productivity by 50%. So my name is Ray Everhart. I'm the product manager for X Analysis, and I'll be joined today by Stephen Flaherty, who's a technical specialist for Fresh Solutions. He'll be showing you the tool, and hopefully at the end of the session, we'll have time for some questions and answers. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to kind of discuss the obvious. What challenges do we have in the IBM community as far as developing code and maintaining code? I think it's universal that that the backlog of things that we have to do, things that need to be changed or improved or modernized, that backlog is growing. There's constantly a list of things that you would like to do, things that need to be done, and that's fueled in part because there's a lack of understanding of the applications that maybe you didn't write or have been around for 20 or 30 years. There's lots of things, lots of programs that you may not even know what they do or how they work. And then as time goes on, typically those applications have been maintained or enhanced in such a way that the technical debt continues to grow with an application. The IBM is all about solving business problems, not technical ones, but business ones. So a lot of times what we've found is that the time to refactor the code to make it better, that's not really given to the developers. They have to get the modification done as quickly as possible or get the enhancement done so that they can meet a business need. So we have this idea about growing technical debt and how much it costs to maintain the software. The more lines of code you have, the more it takes to maintain it, and so you have no new time for development. You're constantly just trying to stay ahead of things that need to be done, things that need to be fixed, and things that are forced on you, things for compliance or for just to stay competitive. So we have all of that compounded with maybe some staff that are considering retirement or have moved away from the IBM. So we have all of these things facing us as developers trying to maintain our applications. So what do we do? Typically what happens is the people rely on documentation as the answer to that. They think that if they have a available documentation that will make the application easier to maintain. So the first question that we wanted to put out there this morning, just to understand your perspective, is how would you rate the accuracy of your documentation? If this is the way that you're going to solve the problem that your developers are facing, just how good is your documentation? So we'll give this just a minute to run through and collect some results. So my personal experience with documentation is that when I was doing development work, documentation was what they gave you to fill the time until they had your user credentials set up and they had a machine for you to work on. So you typically were looking through something that may have been generated 5 or 10 years ago. And the question I always had was, is this really up to date? What has transpired? What projects have happened since this documentation was originally written? So, okay, so I think we've closed this out, and the poll results show that 60% feel that their documentation is somewhat accurate, 40% shows that it's not accurate at all, and luckily we have 0 that indicate they have no documentation. So that's great. That kind of reinforces the same experience that I've had. And so if we can't have confidence in the documentation, if we're not exactly sure, how do we address this problem differently? So how do we, if we can't rely on the documentation, there has to be a better way to enhance the developer's productivity and yet still make sure that he can find every change that that needs to be made for a given project. Or more importantly, what is the impact of that change? You know, I could change something in one place that could have great impacts somewhere else in the code or in the job stream. And, you know, without an understanding of the application, you just don't have the confidence when you're making those changes. Excuse me. Another thing to consider is, you know, as we're trying to find new developers to bring into our organizations, and as we're trying to find people that can help with the backlog, what can I do to get those people productive more quickly? In many places, if you have 4 or 5 million lines of code, you're not going to turn someone loose on that code base right away. You're going to make sure that you oversee what they're doing, and you're not going to let them just go after it right away. You want them to have some time and some experience with the application before they start doing changes. So another concern is, you know, how do I uncover all of the different rules that, you know, someone who wrote the application or someone who's been working on the application for 10 or 20 or 30 years, you know, they already know. But how do I expose that to the rest of the team? How do I share my application knowledge so that people that are coming in can take advantage of everything I've already learned? And then, more importantly, how do I test these applications? How do I know what data I need to have in place to completely test the application? How do I know which applications to test? You know, if I have a particular piece of code that's called by 20 other programs, and those are called by 20 other programs, how do I know to navigate, and what data do I need to test my applications? So all of these things are what goes together. All of these challenges are what go together to make our backlog harder and harder to manage, because we don't know how to scope the projects. We don't know how much time to estimate because we don't have that high level picture. And so projects tend to slow down. We spend a lot of time in analysis. So there has to be a better way to do all of these things. And that's part of what we want to go through and show you today. So we're going to be talking about X analysis. And it's an application understanding tool. So it's all about being able to quickly understand what your application does, understand the dependencies, and give you the confidence that you need to maintain the application. So X analysis is the core to the whole system, and that's what gives you the ability to understand the relationships between tables, between programs and the tables they use and the other programs they call, even down to the field level, where I can track information from a field in a table and track it the whole way through the system and ultimately where it ends up. So that's the core of the system is X analysis. X data test is another module that facilitates test data management as well as regression testing. Resize is a module that allows us to change the size of a table, the column in a table, and then move that change across the entire code base, including work fields and screens and reports. X2E analysis is the tool that takes the X analysis information, but also extracts data from a sign-on 2E model. So that's invaluable if you have a mixed environment where you have not only some in-house written code, but an application that was generated with sign-on. And then, of course, we have some other tools that allow you to do modernization of those existing applications. But today we want to focus on application understanding and productivity. So we do that with using the tool for impact analysis, for extracting the data model from the application, even when the data model isn't specified at the database level. We use the tool to present graphical documentation. More importantly, it's like browsing the internet. So I can move through my application on my system the same way I would browse the internet. So I can start at a high view, I can drill down, and we'll show you some of this in a little bit. But the idea is to let you organically discover what's going on in your application and to follow the trail to get to the information you need to understand. Business rules are something that that we're able to expose through our software. And a business rule is any place where I have data that comes from a table that's used in my program to condition logic. So if I want to know how to test in order to accomplish all of these different test cases, by understanding those business rules, I know what test data I need to have in my application to start with. So, and there's a lot of other reasons to use business rules. But then the last thing is metrics and problem analysis. So finally, instead of saying, well, it took me 3 weeks to make a change to this program last time, I can look at the problems that are associated with that application. I can look at the complexity metrics around that application, and I can start using those facts to make decisions about how long I think something is going to take. So this is all wrapped up into what we're going to show today, this idea of application understanding and how to become more productive using this. So by using X analysis all throughout your DevOps pipeline, you can speed up your developers. You can help them to move forward more quickly because they have the confidence that they've done the impact analysis. They know all of the things that have to be tested. They know how to set up their data. They know what objects they need in their test environment. All of that is readily available now. So that speeds up development. We can onboard new developers faster because we give them a single way of looking at the entire system, even if that system has been written over many, many years with many different styles. We can still give them a common way of looking at all of those different programs. So it really helps to bring people on much more quickly. So that in turn helps to reduce the maintenance costs, it reduces the risk. People either deal with uncertainty by testing more or maybe by testing less. I don't recommend that latter part, but the idea is to test enough, okay, to test completely so that you're confident that you've done what you need to do. Executing the same test over and over again isn't very productive, but executing the tests that you need is how you gain productivity. So this is a story of one of our customers. So, when we talk about, how much does productivity improve, I'm always somewhat conservative in the numbers that I throw out, but our customers are giving us a different number. So United Heritage is a company we've worked with, and excuse me. In fact, I did a webinar with Rob McBride. He was so excited about what they were able to accomplish with the tool that they asked to do a webinar with us and talk about their story. And they boldly claimed the 50% of productivity improvements for their developers. So this is a company that has RPG code. It's been around for a long time, and they have a lot of different things they're trying to do to stay competitive in their industry, and they needed to deal with some of their backlog, all of those same challenges that IBM iShops face. So these are the quotes from Rob McBride, who's the development manager for software at United Heritage. And yeah, like I said, they were so excited by what they were able to start accomplishing that they asked if they could do a testimonial. Let me just go on and give you some of the facts that they shared with us. So what they found was that the amount of time it took them to bring someone new into their staff and get them productive was reduced by 50%, which is pretty amazing when you've got a backlog you're trying to deal with. So they saw an immediate reduction in the bugs that they were introducing as part of their changes by 10%. So if they went in to change something, they would inadvertently introduce new bugs. That has dropped by 10% since they started using X analysis for the impact analysis part and for the testing. At the same time, because they were able to reduce the bugs, because they were able to reduce the time they spent doing analysis and testing, they were able to push 27% more change requests through their system. So they were able to reduce their backlog at a much faster rate by using the tool. He shared with me a number of times where they almost made a change without changing everything that needed to be done. So complete impact analysis was very important to them, because if they introduced a bug into their production environment, that was very bad and very expensive for them. So for them, being sure that they understood the impact of change completely was a very big deal for them. And then of course just the ability to understand an application quickly. I was reminded of this just the other day. Someone asked me to step in because everyone was on vacation, and they asked me to debug a program that I wasn't familiar with. But I took a minute and looked at it with X analysis, and I was able to jump in and help with that in a matter of 10-15 minutes, just because I was able to understand the application quickly. So we have time for another question here, another poll. So how much time do you spend when you're bringing on a new employee or a consultant to help you with a project? How much time do you think you spend right now getting them up to speed so that they're able to be productive? So one of the benefits I have of attending the events like Common in the US is that our customers come up and visit with me and tell me about their experiences with X analysis. I had one person that sought me out, and he told me that what he used to take 3 months to do, he can do in 3 days now. That's a pretty big claim, but they erred on the side of too much analysis at the beginning. So their way of approaching it was to manually look at everything. So if I had to do that if I had to oversee what a new consultant or a new programmer was doing, you can see how that would greatly affect the productivity, because they would spend so much time in analysis just to make sure that they didn't introduce any new problems. Okay, so how does our poll look here? Okay, so the majority of people seem to spend somewhere between a week and a month to onboard someone new, and we have equally split between a week or longer than a month. So that's an interesting range. My experience has been that easily a month is spent before you let someone loose on the code, sometimes more. But let's go ahead and resume what we were discussing here. So these are the areas that the typical developer is going to spend his time on. So program and system maintenance, understanding the application, and what kind of impact analysis do I have when I'm making an enhancement. So these are the numbers that have been reported to us. So if a developer is, how much are they using the tool for different parts? Always you're trying to understand, you're trying to do knowledge capture. But if 50% of my time is split between doing enhancements and 50% is spent doing system maintenance, what kind of a return can I expect by using a tool? So on average, you can see 40+% by using the tool to help you do the maintenance and doing the enhancements. There are some things that obviously you're going to get bigger return on, but using the tool, and Stephen will show you this just shortly, it's a different way of looking at your applications. You're not looking at it line by line anymore. You're looking at it in terms of objects and entities. So this kind of gives you an idea of where people might be spending their time. So we won't delay any further. We'll go ahead and, Stephen, if you're all set up, I'll make you presenter.
Yep.
And we'll get you going on the demonstration. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody again for joining us today. Welcome. My name is Stephen Flaherty. I've been with the Fresche organization for close to 10 years, and I come with 30 plus years of RPG developer experience. So I am basically one of you, and I can certainly understand the pains of, like Ray said, doing analysis manually and drawing flow charts and getting into all of that. What I'm about to show you, I think you'll see that X analysis is certainly going to help. It's going to help us mitigate all of that manual effort. So the first step is to install X analysis onto your IBM I. It's a two-step installation process. It's basically this. This is the library XA prod, and this is where all of our software resides. It's our menus, our commands. And then once you access that, you can go right into the menu. So let me first explain how X analysis works. So you're going to see the term cross-reference library, and you're going to see the term repository used interchangeably within our software package. First thing I'm going to ask you is to provide me with all of the libraries on your system that have your program objects, your data, your files rather, your source. And what I'm going to do is take that information, I'm going to kick off a batch job, and I'm going to go and build a brand new library on your system. You choose the name. And what X analysis is doing there is we're going to read every single line of source code in your system, and we're going to build this heavily indexed repository where that's going to have all of the where used information, programs where used, files where used, work fields, on and on it goes, as well as the data model, those data relationships. It's a read-only process. We're not changing anything on your system. We're not updating anything. And this is not a copy of your production library. It's a brand new repository that has all of that where used information in it. The next step is to install the client. Now, we do ship free of charge the Eclipse Runtime Client. It's a read-only client because we realize that if you do use RDI in your shop, that is a licensed product from IBM, and we wouldn't expect people to pay a license for someone to use RDI that really isn't going to be making programming changes. So it's unlimited licenses by IP address. So the client is broken down into two areas. Here's my navigation pane on the left, and here's my perspective window on the right. You can see it's currently blank because I haven't requested anything from the navigation tree. Here's the IP address of where the XA prod library resides on my IBM I, and these are a list of all of the repositories that I have currently set up. Now, you can have as many repositories as you would like. This repository that we're looking at today, you can see the library list. My object libraries are on the left, my source library is on the right. This is a demo library, therefore it's the same names library, so to keep it simple, but in your environment, you may have many object libraries and you may have a few source libraries. And again, you can have a repository for test, for QA, for production, for John, for Susan, the list goes on and on. So let's now take a look at, I'm going to double click on all objects, and I'm going to be presented with a window of 387 objects. It's reading the information from my repository. Double click on programs. I'm going to get another window, another tab that's going to now list out all of the programs. I have 170 programs and so forth. So I can click on files. And what I'm getting is a user interface where I can filter based on the information that I'm asking for. I'm just asking for all my files, all my programs, and all of my objects. Now, keep in mind, each tab and each window that I'm opening up enables me to export that information to PDF, Word, or Excel. So if I'm on a team project or I'm building a technical design document, you can export that and create a nice tech design document for yourself. At the end of the demo today, I'll show you how I'm going to gather up all of the tabs I'm about to open, and we will import all of that information into a Word document using a feature within X Analysis called Documenter. Now let's talk about the data model. The data model is a representation of all of the physical files in my system. and all of the relationships that are there. And we're not just doing this by reading, program cross-reference. We're actually reading the code in those programs to get those relationships for those files. If I want to become laser focused on just the CUS file, for instance, I can click on it, double click, and I'm presented with another window, another tab with just those 8 files that I'm interested in. Keep in mind that all of the charts and graphs I'm going to show you today come with a color-coded key legend that's indigenous to that particular chart or graph. All of the tabs and lists that I presented to you today, I can select either the picture or the actual object or program from the list, and I can do what's called right mouse click. I can right mouse click and I'm going to get what's called the context menu. This enables our go anywhere from anywhere technology within our software package. So when in doubt in XAnalysis, just simply right mouse click and you can get there. Here are some of the things that you can do when you right mouse click on an object. I can look at the source for this physical file. I can go back, I can right mouse click, I can look at, let's look at the file fail details. That's going to present me with another window with all of the file names. Now that we've reviewed how the perspective window behaves and how the navigation tree behaves, let's talk about impact analysis. This is really the meat of the entire tool. This is why we're going to use this, because say, for instance, management came to me and said, we have a project, we have to increase the customer group field in this file from 2 positions to 4. Go out into the system, Stephen, and research every single program, every single line of code where this thing is being used, because we have to change it. We have to unit test, we have to regression test, and we have to get this moved into production. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to right mouse click, file field where I use all my references. What this is going to present me with is yet another window and another tab. And this is going to list every single line of code in my system where the customer group is being used. You can see that I have my member on the left, I have my source statement, and the actual line of code. Now, we all know as developers that the story does not end there. What if I moved that field to a save field or a work field or a data structure or a parameter? Well, I would have to now manually go back and rescan all of my source again for that field and then get that field name. So, but in XAnalysis, what we have a feature called leveling. So now I'm going to go to my level 2 moves for this field. And you're going to see that my number of lines is going to increase from 63 to 115. And you can clearly see over here, I've got a level 2 move right here. So, and I can go to level 3. If I want to look at the parameters where I'm using this field in the programs, I could do that. But what if I move that field to another parameter name and use that in another call? That's cascading parameters. I've been asked to do maximum tracking. So now I'm going to go every single line of code in every program, and I'm going to get 161 lines of code. And yes, oh, by the way, we will give you queries, and we will give you free RPG. So anything that's supported from IBM, we also support that as well. Let's go back to my objects list. I'm going to scroll down to my WWCust RPG program name, and we're going to take a look at the source code for this RPG program. There we go, WWCust, where are you? I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to go into the source code. What can we do while we have the source code up? Well, a couple of things. First of all, I can go in and look at the indented source code, which will give me the beginning and ending of each if then do loop. Also, again, as we're reading every single line of code in your system, one of the things we're going to provide you with is the pseudocode for every program. So this is going to be the English interpretation of the actual executable lines of code. So again, if you have a business analyst, a new employee, maybe you're rewriting this program in Java, though any person that maybe can't read RPG code, you can provide them with the pseudocode for this program. They can get up to speed fairly quickly. If there's a display file associated with this RPG program, I can click on the green button, and that's going to provide me with every record format in the display file, along with the field names for that record format, the XY coordinate, the field, and of course the file to which it's referring. If I want to go to the next record format, I just click on the arrow key, and we also provide you with all of the display file attributes, keeping in mind every tab I'm opening today can be exported to PDF, Word, or Excel. Let's go back to my list of programs, and we're going to go back to the WWCUS, and now we're going to talk about some of the charts and some of the graphs, some of the flow charts that are shipped with the product. Again, I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to talk about the data flow diagram. Then we'll look at the hierarchy chart, and then we'll look at the structure chart diagram. Let's start with the data flow diagram for this RPG program. This information that's provided. So my main focus is highlighted in red. And what this is telling me is that I have 8 called programs, 6 input files, 1 input, and 1 update output program. Additionally, if I expand the caret for the attribute for this logical view that's being used, we're going to give you just the field or the fields that are being used from that file in that program. What this means to you is you don't have to recompile that program in QTemp, then scroll to the bottom of the listing and write all that information down and record all of that. All of that information's in your repository. We did the work for you. If I want to look at the data flow diagram for the physical file, I simply double click on the picture. And that's going to present me with a window for the physical file. Now, what this is telling me is that I have 5 logical views, 25 input programs, 1 input output, 1 output, 8 update, and 14 update programs. And yes, we will give you queries and we will give you trigger programs as well. I like to pause here because I know probably all of you in the audience have had the opportunity in your career to draw this flowchart manually using ABC Flowcharter or Visio. And just keep in mind how long it would take you to do all this research, come in and draw this box, draw these arrows, and create this document. And that's only for 1 file. And if you were to make a change to this tomorrow or next week, are you going to remember to come back in and update your documentation? Or have the time to do that? Because I know as programmers, we just love to do documentation, right? Let's go back to the programs. I'm going to right mouse click. And now let's talk about the hierarchy chart. We're all familiar with the hierarchy chart. It's an old school diagram, but it's a good one nonetheless. It gives us the same information as the data flow. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of calls here. Let's go back. Move this out of the way. Now, instead of going back to the list of programs to show you the next chart, again, go anywhere from Anywhere Technology by right mouse clicking. I'm just going to right mouse click on the picture, and I'm going to go right into the structure chart. In my opinion, I saved the best for last. I really, really like this, this chart. What this is giving me for this RPG program is the entire invocation stack for this call. And keep in mind, I have the color-coded key legend that tells me that pink is an update and green is display and blue is print. So very, very quickly I can discern what's going on with these programs. Another thing we're going to give you, I'm going to show me the files. Show me the files at every call level. And the other thing that we're going to provide you with is watch what happens when I hover over the RPG program with my mouse. What pops up is called the narrative box. So again, as we're reading every single line of code in your system, not only am I going to give you those data relationships, the file relationships, the where used, the pseudocode, but we're going to give you a narrative. The narrative is the actual executable lines of code written out in English in sentences. Keeping in mind that we're not giving you comments. Comments are not reliable. If you're carrying the tech support phone and you're on call and invoicing blows up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you have to get up and log on to fix the issue, I can probably guarantee as an RPG developer myself, you're not going to take the time to update the comments on that RPG program at that time. So comments are not reliable. When I began the demo today, I explained how I can export each one of these tabs individually to PDF, Word, or Excel, and to create a nice technical design document. I'm going to show you an easier way to do that. I'm going to select the RPG program we've been working with today. I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to go down for Mark for Documenter. And then I'm going to take the physical file we've been working with, and I'm going to mark that for Documenter. If you come up here to the Documenter icon, this user interface asks me, what are you documenting today? I'm going to generate a document, and I'm going to generate a single document, MS Word. I'm going to name it that. I'm going to give it that as a description, and here's the path to which the document will be created. This user interface that you're looking at here represents all of the tabs that I just opened up for you today. So instead of exporting each one individually, I can just click on the checkboxes and tell XAnalysis what I want to document. I want the object list, the data model diagram, my logical views, my file field where details, my objects where used, the data flow diagram, that structure chart that I love so much, and of course the screen prints. All right, this is the table of contents in the order in which it will appear in my Word document. I can, at this time, move them up and down and rearrange them on the page. I create an 8.5 by 11 document, I click Finish, and this is what I get. This Word document I'm about to show you represents the demo that I just did for you today. Let's take a look and see what XAnalysis gives us. Here's my table of contents. We're going to bring in the color-coded key legend for every chart, regardless of whether you asked for it or not. That's the name of my document and description. Here are my selected options that I just checked off. These are the objects that I'm documenting today. And here's my data model diagram for my physical file. There's my logical views over the physical file. The file field details for the physical file comes with the field name, the description, the buffer length, the attributes. The objects where used for my physical file, all my display files, my RPG, my RPG LE, my printer files, and I believe I have COBOL programs at the bottom. I do. Okay. The data flow diagram for the RPG program, and the data flow diagram for the physical file. Look at all of the boxes that I did not have to draw manually, or I didn't have to do all that research. And if I make a programming change, I just regenerate the document. In 10 seconds, I'll be done. And the structure chart diagram with the show files. Also, there was a checkbox for this. If I wanted the narrative, I could have brought in the narrative for every call as well. And then finally, at the bottom, you're going to find my 3 record formats for my display file with the field names, the screen field names. And I didn't have to copy paste. I didn't have to key this in. And then finally, there's the last one. So in essence, I created a 35-page technical design document in 30 seconds. Let's go back to my client. I'm going to close these windows, and I am going to jump back over to my navigation tree and show you a couple of other features before I wrap up the demo, one of which is called application areas. So today, in my main repository, I have everything there is to know about my ERP system: purchasing, order entry, EDI, shipping, receiving, accounting. However, Mary, my accountant Mary, she is just concerned about accounting. She supports accounting. So I can define to Xanalysis all of the accounting objects, isolate those objects, and create what's called an application area for Mary, so she can work in her own sandbox. She can do her own testing. This is not another library on your system. It's an area within the Xanalysis repository. And you can have as many as you want. You can have one for marketing, one for EDI, one for shipping, one for receiving. So now Mary, she's working in her own little world, and she has her 5 objects files here, and she's doing her testing. But one day management comes to Mary and says, we're going to take this antiquated homegrown accounting package and we're replacing it with JD Edwards. So Mary, go off into the main repository and start scanning every single module in the ERP to find out where accounting touches. Does it change to purchasing to get the purchase order number? Does it go back to shipping to get the ASN number? Does it go back to EDI to get the original item number the customer sent on the PO? So instead of Mary panicking, we're going to give Mary this button. This is the unrestricted to the application area. This blue boxes, the blue boxes represent what I just described to you. Accounting touches these areas in some way, shape, or form. They really don't have anything to do with accounting, but accounting might change to the stock balance file. I might do a set lower limit read equal on the contract header. I don't care what it's doing. All I know is that I have to go in here, Mary has to go in here and do the research, because when she replaces the yellow boxes with JD Edwards, she needs to pop into all of the blue areas to find out what's going on, and do I have to modify the Edwards programs to now facilitate that. That would be application areas. Climbing back up the tree, let's stop at business rules. Again, as I'm reading every single line of source code in your system, I am going to also pull out all of the business rules by source member. So let's take a look at this guy here. Here are all the business rules for this RPG program. I didn't have to climb through the code. I didn't have to scan manually reading code and getting these hard-coded values. Speaking of hard-coded values, say for instance I made a change to that now. I added 500,000 to that contract header. What if I made that change in 7 other RPG programs on my system? I need to know about that. I can't be missing a program. And that, of course, goes with consolidated rules. Consolidated rules is the same information. It just gives you in a nice tree format. Let's go down to my contract header. Look at all of the places where I hard-coded the debtor field. And each one is a different source member. So now I can very quickly determine what needs to be changed if I now add the number 1 to that debt count, hard-coded. Shame on me for hard-coding, but you know, that's the real world. We all do it, or we've all done it. One final thing, let's talk about metrics. We're going to talk about auditing. One of the things that we're doing for you is we're reading every program in your system. We're building out the repository. I'm giving you pseudocode, narratives, the file relationships, the where used information, but I'm also auditing your system. And I'm going to alert you that there's some things that may have gone awry. You can react to it or not, but the information's here, such as source with no object, object with no source. The update date changed after the object was created. I have 35 programs that have more than 48 lines of code and an if statement. This is probably my favorite one because I've been burnt on it so many times. The receiver is too small to hold the result. I have 130 programs where I have factor 1 divided by factor 2 equals the result that's too small. Guess what's going to blow up at 2 o'clock in the morning? And then finally, I have 12 unused subroutines, and I have 33 unused logical views. So why is invoice batch taking 5 hours to run? Oh, I don't know, because it's issuing an update over a physical file that has 10 million records, but it has to go through 5 of these logical views to get there. And that does conclude my demo of X analysis for today. And I'm going to pass this back over to Ray, if I may.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Let me switch control here again.
Oh, you can do that, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So when I first started demoing X analysis, some of my first victims sat through 2 hours of demonstration. So Stephen, you did a great job of condensing it down. The capabilities, get developers excited because there's just so much that you can do and so many ways that you can explore your application. So, just in summary, it's all about application understanding, and then using that understanding to manage your applications, to strategically find areas that will bring you the most improvement. So, we all have those programs in our system that nobody wants to touch. They're too hard, they're too fragile. With X analysis, you can gain the confidence you need to start improving those. You focus your effort where you're going to get the most return. So by having increased productivity, now I have a little bit extra time that I can start to devote to making my life easier by paying down some of that technical debt. So having a detailed understanding and seeing how all of those objects interact with each other, being able to drill down into the details or stay at a high level, it just helps you to gain that understanding in a much quicker way, and you don't have to remember quite as many things because you can always look at the view again and refresh your mind. You can create the physical documentation. If you have some kind of a compliance situation, this makes it very easy for you to generate an artifact of the project, maybe a before and after type of view, and that will save you a lot of time. I know when I was creating documentation for Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, you spend a lot of time creating a document that no one would probably ever look at. So you can generate those types of documents very quickly with X analysis, but still have the online view, the up-to-date, up-to-the-moment representation of what's going on in your system. And then the ideas of what we can do once we have the level of understanding. Say I have my business rules that I've been able to extract. I can look for places where those rules are duplicated, where they might be implemented inconsistently. And so I can start really improving my application without all of the pain of digging out where all of those issues exist within the code. So there's just so much that you can do with it to help you improve your productivity, which is what we all need to be able to address some of the issues that we have. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Fresh, we're a company that is very strongly invested in the IBM, and we've been bringing people into the company that have that same view of how can we help the community preserve the investment they've made on the IBM. How do we help people? And the answer is through automation. Okay, we need to help people maintain their systems, change their systems, evolve and enhance their systems. And automated tools is the way to do that. Every one of the developers on an IBM could probably put together something like X analysis given enough time, because those are the tools that the developer needs. And it's just that we've spent probably 25 to 30 years developing and refining and enhancing this tool. So this is there to help people who are maintaining their applications. So we're all about preserving what you have and then making it better. So we provide help in a number of different ways. We were looking primarily at how do you support an application. With this demo, we also have tools that help you with refacing, improving your user interface, changing your workflow so that you can not only change the appearance of the screen, but actually how it interacts with people and the workflow that will streamline and modernize and introduce new capabilities. Obviously, the analysis and productivity is through X-Analysis, but we have tools that help with document distribution, reporting. We do modernization work, and then we have strategy services. So, when the IBM I, when the System 36 and 400, way back when, the design choices that developers had were limited. There weren't that many ways of creating a screen. You had panel groups, which nobody really uses that much, and then you have your display file. So there's not a lot of choices. Well, in today's IT environment, there are lots of choices. So how do you know which one to choose? We provide IT strategy services that help you to not only assess where you are now, but what makes sense for you to do in the future to get to the goal that your management has set out for you. And in the event that you need some additional help, or some additional resources, we also provide those. And in fact, our application staffing and services group all use X-Analysis just because of the productivity gains that our teams get from using that. So now we come to the question, how can Fresche help you? What can we do to help you as you manage your applications, as you seek to improve and retain the value of what's been created on the IBM I? We can provide training, we can provide assistance if you need that, we can help with this, outsourcing. How can we help you? If there's topics of webinars that you'd like to see us present, we frequently present at Common. We do webinars throughout the year, so how can we help you? I've put my email address here as well as Stephen's, so please feel free to reach out to us, give us feedback. What problems would you like help solving? So we have a few minutes left over. We'll open the chat box here. If anyone has any questions, we can try to address those. And we'll give just a minute to take a few questions. Okay, so the first question is, does X-Analysis work with SQL? So SQL has a number of different flavors to it. You can use SQL to write stored procedures. You can use SQL to create database objects and database relationships. You can use embedded SQL inside of high-level languages like RPG and COBOL, or even in CL. And then you can use dynamic SQL. So in answer to that question, yes, we can uncover the objects created with SQL, with DDL specifically. So if I have a stored procedure or a function that was written, I can uncover those, and those appear as objects, just like any other program. If I have tables created with DDL, obviously I can see those. If we have database constraints, those are shown. When you start considering embedded SQL, obviously if embedded SQL can be parsed as well, dynamic SQL provides a little bit of a challenge because any part of the SQL statement could be a variable, or it could be concatenated, or it could be constructed on the fly. So depending on what you're doing in your dynamic SQL, it may or may not be possible to understand the entire statement. So if the file name is dynamically composed as part of the statement, then I won't know what file is being used, because X-Analysis does its analysis at static. When the code is just sitting there, it doesn't run against a running application. It looks at the objects that are created and the source code used to create them. So yes, we do support SQL, but the dynamic SQL may be less discoverable, just like if you use a dynamic program name when you call one program. Those things are hard to differentiate unless you're monitoring the runtime. So, any other questions? Okay, another question. How is X-Analysis licensed? So X-Analysis is licensed to the serial number of the machine. So if I have multiple LPARs all on one serial number, I only need to have one X-Analysis license. There is no charge per developer, so you can install it on the desktop as many times as you need to. Okay, so we're approaching the top of the hour here. So thank you all for attending. And like I said, if there's anything that we can do to help, please reach out, and we'll be happy to get back with you. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for this webinar today. Really a lot of good information. Thank you again. And also thank you, Fresh, for supporting the community as you do in very, very good ways. Thank you all, and the webinar will be published on YouTube soon, so you can look at it later on and share it with your colleagues and friends. Okay, bye-bye.